What's up in War Eagle, everybody? It's your guy, Ike Jones, and we're back with another morning drop. And today, we're talking more about the acquisition of JP Pegues and what he brings to the Auburn basketball team. Let's get into it. Y'all know how we do right here, War Report style. Let's drop it on.
You are now listening to the War Report. Drop.
Morning drop. It is Monday, April the 15th. Hopefully everybody's month, we are halfway through it, is off to a really good start. And start of your week right here with you guys here at the War Report on the Auburn Express. Let's get in here and talk a little bit more Auburn basketball. Of course, yesterday we had the conversation, if you were there on the weekend tailgate, about JP Pegues coming over as a transfer guard from Furman. And he is going to be a valuable asset. You know, if you listened to me last week talk about the fact that Auburn did not have a point guard, they solved that issue pretty quickly with JP Pegues coming in from the transfer portal. I think Auburn still needs to get another guard, somebody who is really kind of a main facilitator, or maybe someone who is a pure shooter, right? So there's a lot of scores on this team when you talk about Denver Jones, when you talk about Chad Baker-Mazara, when you talk about the freshmen coming in from Tahad Pettiford and Ja'Kai Howard. You've got some dynamic scoring ability there for Auburn, but the question is going to be, how well are they going to shoot from the outside? I think that this Auburn basketball team, really just the direction that basketball is moving in general, that's professional and collegiate basketball, the ability to shoot the three-pointer is going to be important. Auburn's going to play tenacious defense, but need to be able to score proficiently from three, particularly in close basketball games, to be able to extend leads late in games where teams are going to try to dig down a little bit more on some of the drive stuff. You need guys who can step out and knock down the three. Auburn has some there. I think, one more guard for sure needs to be on this team. And you can go either direction, either a pure facilitating guard or someone who can absolutely come in and bury the outside shot. A 3-and-D type of guard would be good. A big guard that can come in and shoot the three proficiently. But anyway, let's talk about what's here on the team right now for Auburn basketball. And JP Pegues is bringing in 3 years of experience there at Furman. He is a 2-year starter, so started the last 2 seasons for Furman, most notably in the Furman run 2 years ago in the NCAA tournament. He was an integral part in that. And then again last season, very big for the team. Comes in averaging 11.4 points per game, 3.3 assists, 3.2 rebounds per game. So definitely available to come out and score. He is considered kind of a combo scoring guard at 6'1", but has played against some of the best competition in his career. When you're talking about outside of his conference and even in the conference tournament, those are some tough games within conference to be able to play. And then when you talk about the NCAA tournament, gone up against some of the best in the country, he is a valuable asset piece for what this team needs to be able to do next season. But the question was posed yesterday, and this is kind of what inspired today's morning drop. Mike G on the Weekend Tailgate asked the question, did Auburn get better at point guard? And he specifically asked, is JP Pegues an upgrade over Trey Donaldson and Aden Holloway? So, I answered that question yesterday just kind of off the cuff. And, today I want to dig a little bit more into the numbers and talk about whether or not that's a true statement. Is this Auburn basketball team better? Now, it's difficult to know, game in and game out versus Power 5 competition, whether he's going to be able to produce at the same level. But we will get into some of his film and just kind of look at some of the tendencies of things that he did the same way that we did with Denver Jones coming up from FIU, the same way that we did with Chaney Johnson coming up from UAH, and the same way that we did with Chad Baker-Mazara when he was coming up from the school there in Florida. I forget the name. But anyway, the same way we did with all of those players, trying to figure out, do they translate to this level of basketball? We'll do that with JP Pegues. So we'll look at the film and see what it tells us about tendencies. But we can take a look at statistics right now and see how he has performed in his career versus how those other two gentlemen have performed in their career. Now, the sample size is not going to be nearly as large for either of them, but specifically for Aden Holloway. But I don't think it's unfair to kind of look at where they are today. And because what you're looking at is not necessarily projecting forward into the future about what they're going to be in 2 or 3 years, but what they will be next season based upon what they've shown so far. And whether or not they make any monumental leaps, any of them could potentially do that year over year. In basketball, it's one of the few sports that I think that you can see a person come back over an off season and be drastically different in how they're able to impact basketball games, or decidedly worse depending upon how their usage is in a different system or what they're being asked to do. I know it's not men's basketball, but I think about Haley Van Lith and how dynamic she was and lighting the world on fire at Louisville, but then asked to do a very different role at LSU, and she didn't fit into that role quite as well. But JP Pegues, I think Bruce Pearl has done an immaculate job in the transfer portal of finding guards that fit his system and the ways that he wants them to play after seeing them play at a specific level, saying, okay, I can see how you mesh in with what we need and want to do at this level. But has had varying levels of return on whether or not they've actualized those things. I think did a marvelous job last year in the transfer portal, specifically with Denver Jones, Chaney Johnson, Chad Baker-Mazar, those guys in the transfer portal. Really great job of meshing into the system on defense and finding ways to be able to utilize their skills on offense. I expect a really an upswing this year from Chaney Johnson in that regard as far as his offensive ability and maybe being able to play defense a little bit better without fouling, because I think his athleticism is through the roof. Anyway, again, refocusing here on the conversation about Pegues. And when you look at the numbers here for the three, of course, Pegues averages more minutes because he's not been playing on a Bruce Pearl team where he believes in, Bruce Pearl believes in having minute distribution be fairly equitable across his talented bench players. But I can see a change back over to a more dominant number of minutes for a starting point guard in this system with JP, who's used to playing, as you see, 26.7 minutes per game on average over the 3 years of his career. If he's going to be averaging 21, 22 minutes per game, something similar to what Aden Holloway was averaging last year, you see him just north of 20 minutes per game. I think that would be good. A few less minutes on him per game on average to keep more in the tank for him late game scenarios and late season scenarios, I think would benefit him really well. But in those 26 minutes per game, almost 27 minutes per game, he averaged that 11.4 points per game, and that's including the freshman year where he didn't play very much. And that's well above what the other two are averaging in points per game so far in their careers. Trey Donaldson has not been a scoring first guy. He's been a guy that's been concentrated on assists, but listen, in the time that he's been there, his assists per game still less than what JP Pegues. Now again, it's difficult to make an apples to apples comparison considering JP plays more minutes per game. So you'd have to try to do some math on if you give Trey an additional 11 minutes per game, what would his points assist look like in that additional time? Now, in an additional 11 minutes per game, that's almost doubling his minutes. Like you could say, okay, if we double his minutes, that'd put him up to 30. So not exactly double, but let's just say we doubled Trey's minutes per game. He'd still only be around 9, right? So he'd still have less points per game. And again, I'm doubling it, which I'm giving him more. He'd only be at 9. He'd be 4, almost 5 assists per game, which is crazy. But then, he'd be an additional turnover per game. He'd be close to the same in the amount of rebounds. And, if field goal percentage is held true, all of those things, right, you could extrapolate and look at those minutes. But as far as a scoring guard is concerned, I think I would give the nod there to Pegues. Now, when you're talking about efficiency, if you get into the deep-seated numbers, which we'll do in just a minute, those numbers look a little bit different, and I'll kind of give you my ranking of where I feel like those guys land. As far as assists are concerned, right, I think Trey Donaldson though he is the low man on the totem pole as far as his assists per game, I think Trey Donaldson is actually the best assisting point guard of the three. Now, again, I may have a little bit of, and I'm clouded in this because I'm just looking at statistics. I'm not actually looking at game tape of Pegues to be able to do that. But I think Trey Donaldson is the better facilitator of the 3-point guards. Taking care of the basketball, Aden Holloway didn't turn the ball over a lot, right? Like he uh, had some turnovers, but especially if you're looking at this from a freshman standpoint, his numbers don't look as bad as I think some people tried to make it seem. I think they were underwhelming for the 5-star prospect that he was and what people had hoped that he would be as far as his ability to shoot the basketball. But, listen, his assist to turnover ratio is right there with those guys and doing a really good job of not turning the basketball over. As far as rebounding is concerned, I'm actually a little surprised that Trey Donaldson is not further up on this list, but again, he has the fewest number of minutes per game that he's averaging over his career. So if you give him more minutes, I would assume his rebound numbers would go up. But JP Pegues has been proficient in his ability to go as a guard and rebound. Field goal percentage wise, this one is the one that's not necessarily shocking, but interesting to look at when you talk about who's the better shooter of the three as far as ability to make shots in the game. From 2, that's Trey Donaldson. From 3, that's Trey Donaldson so far in his career. He shot fewer of them, but he makes them at a higher clip. But I think the more disappointing thing when you're talking about your guards and ability to control games, particularly late game scenarios, and this is, I think, the big way in which JP Pegues is going to be very helpful. Ability to get to the free throw line and ability to make free throws. He is by far the best free throw shooter of the three. He's not far behind in 3-point shooting. He's not a lights out 3-point shooter behind Trey Donaldson as far as his percentages. And then from field goal, he's not far behind. But his ability to shoot free throws consistently, especially in the number of big games that he's been in and still been able to do that across his career, he's been consistently up in the 80s in free throw percentage. So that is a definite upgrade in that regard. And that's, I think, a big thing for your guards. We've talked often on this show, and I'm not the only person who says this, but in order to win in tournament scenarios, late game, big games, you need guards that are able to control the game. And how you control the game, you get stops and you get to the free throw line and make your free throws, because teams want to slow the pace down. They want to preserve clock, so they're going to start fouling. You need the guy who is going to have the ball in his hands to be able to make good decisions or be able to get fouled and go to the free throw line confidently, knocking those down in those big moments. And so Pegues has shown the ability over the process of games to be able to get to the free throw line and make his free throws. So looking forward to seeing how that translates at this next level as to whether or not he's going to be able to continue to be that level of proficient from the free throw line. All right, let's take a quick break here and we will get back in, and I'm going to give you my rankings for how I feel like those guys are. Again, this is today. This isn't a projection of where I feel like they're going to be in the NBA, but just as to who I would take next season. We're going to look at that. We're going to look a little bit deeper into the numbers as well. But you are listening to the Auburn Express right here on the War Report Morning Drop, and that is brought to you by the good folks over at MANSCAPED. We are still in the midst of Testicular Cancer Month and the Awareness Month, and the Testicular Cancer Society partnered with MANSCAPED and you guys over here at the War Report to bring you some awareness of that. Manscaped.com/TCS is where you want to go. You can use code REPORT when you get over there to purchase the Manscaped products. But when you are there, make sure that you are doing the tests and looking at all the things necessary to keep your health in the right space. Particularly testicular cancer is a menace out here amongst men between the ages of 15 and 35. So if you haven't tested and you haven't been checking yourself, make sure you do that. Manscaped.com/TCS to learn how to check yourself for early signs of cancer. Manscaped is on a mission to donate $50,000 to the Testicular Cancer Society to help save lives. So make sure you go there, you purchase a little something. It helps go a long way towards making sure they can reach that goal. Also, when you are out here in these streets, make sure that you are, this has absolutely nothing to do with Manscaped, but just because they are partially a sponsor of what we've got going on, I want to give a quick shout out to BetUS. When you're there, you can get percent sign up bonus up to $2,500, 24-hour issued payouts, and 24-hour customer service at betus.com. And the link is down there in the description for you to be able to get there and learn all the great things that are available to you with BetUS as the sponsor today of the Morning Drop. All right, let's get back over into the conversation. Again, I appreciate everybody for dropping in with me today here on the Morning Drop. Share the video if you have not already. Like the video if you have not already. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And if you haven't joined the channel, go ahead and do that. We've got some great member content that I'm going to be bringing you. Going to continue to break down film from Aden. Going to continue to break down film on all of the transfers that are going to be coming into Auburn basketball, both men's and women's. Got some stuff on Talia Scott that's going to be coming up, who has recently committed to the women's basketball team. So make sure that you all are locked in with all those things that the War Report has to offer you. And your guy Ike Jones will continue to crank that out. But we're continuing the conversation about JP Pegues. Is he an upgrade for Auburn basketball in terms of the point guard position? Now, we looked at the numbers in the first half, just pure numbers. I like to get in and look at the T rank on some of this stuff. And if you are a fan of Bartovic, then you can, Bartorovic, excuse me, you can go and look at his T rank. It's a free site that allows you to look at these numbers in a little bit more detail, or you can go and look at some of the other analytic sites. That's the one that I've been using most recently, most predominantly. So feel free to check them out for some of these numbers that I'm giving you, so you can verify the numbers for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. But you know, I am fond of, when on the Lobtown podcast, looking at stuff around efficiency rating, so or an effective field goal percentage for guys. So the efficiency ratings are important for me to see kind of, you know, when we're talking about this extrapolation of, you know, how efficient a player are they, and will that bear out over more minutes for them? Are they going to be able to win more often or continue down that path? Effective field goal percentage. Trey Donaldson is the leader in effective field goal percentage in his career for those three players. He is at 54.5% versus a 51.3% last. And I'm just looking at last season over the career. Let's just take a look at career, actually. 50.9 for JP Pegues. And for Trey Donaldson, it is 52.5. Now, Aden Holloway, of course, has only had the one season. His effective field goal percentage is down at 41.9. So, you know, his ability, or the ability of Trey Donaldson to be effective and put the ball in the basket, particularly from two. And again, you know, you see his field goal percentage and his three-point percentage is the highest amongst them, but his effective field goal percentage is the highest overall of the three. The other place where I think that, you know, Trey Donaldson, again, I think that he is the quintessential point guard is in his assist rate. So 28.3 versus 22 for Aden Holloway and 26.1 for JP Pegues. So effective field goal percentage, Trey Donaldson. Assist, Trey Donaldson, right? So he's a guy who is good at doing the scoring stuff and good at the facilitation thing. Now, when you look at the turnover rate, for Trey Donaldson, it is 20.2, which is not great, versus Aden only down at 11.9, which is phenomenal. And JP Pegues on his career, 22.2. Oh, excuse me. I was looking at last season for Trey. Over on his career, it's 20.6 for Trey. Again, Aden at 11.9, and Pegues is at 15.6. So Trey turning the ball over a little bit more, but I think, you know, him dominating so much more in the assist category, assist to turnover ratio, is going to be very similar for him. For a point guard, I would rank them in this manner. I would say Trey Donaldson would be my number one choice as the best point guard of the three. Now, you know, I mentioned in the first half that the free throw percentage and the ability to knock down the free throws is big. You can't throw away the experience that Pegues has. So that's going to be something that's super crucial when you're talking about getting back into the tournament, which I'm sure that Auburn has tournament aspirations once again this season with the return of Dylan Cardwell. When you got Chad Baker-Mazara, you've got Chaney Johnson coming back, Denver Jones coming back, and you add a JP Pegues, right? If Auburn were just to roll out with those five as a starting lineup, you've got a pretty good lineup. Now, you're a little undersized in the front court. If you're going to have, 6'7", 6'8" Chaney Johnson as your four, but I think that you're still in a good spot as far as physicality is concerned. You've got length at your 2 and your 3, and then you've got a solid point guard to start there. Now you just got to figure out what your bench is going to look like. But I would put, JP Pegues and his experience, and now Denver Jones with another year of experience, and then a Chad Baker-Mazara with all of his experience, and a Dylan Cardwell with all of his experience. That's a really good nuclear unit to be able to build around with a young Chaney Johnson coming in. And then you've got the talented freshman in Ja'Kai Howard and Tahad Pettiford adding on to that for a solid 8-person rotation. Darren Scott coming in and being another kind of enforcer guy that you can have there. And this is all assuming Janai Broome doesn't return. Anyway, all right, let's refocus. But of the three, I think that Trey Donaldson probably is the best player right now. Now, he is playing in a system that's probably a little bit better with better athletes around him, able to knock down some shots. I went and watched some games for Furman, and, listen, the athletes around Pegues and their ability to knock down shots and that sort of thing, not great, right? So you put him around some better athletes, his numbers might be a little bit better. His decision-making is sound, and again, he's able to get to the free throw line at a good rate for a guard and able to knock those free throw down at a good clip, at a stellar clip at 81%. So I'm putting Trey at number 1, but it's not by a lot, right? Like, and you when you put in the experience that Pegues has in the free throws, it draws it a little bit closer. But listen, I am a big fan defensively as well. Like, we haven't even really talked about the defensive end, but on the defensive end, I think that Trey Donaldson is the better defender of the three. And, when you talk about a guy who's the best facilitator, shoots the best effective field goal percentage, and is the best defender, then I would take Trey Donaldson as the best point guard of those three. But again, I think for what this Auburn team needs to be able to function as their starting point guard, Pegues might be a better fit going into next season, considering, again, they don't really need him to be a scorer, but he can score pretty effectively and at a high clip. Again, 11.4 points per game, to be a double-figure scorer for this team as at the point guard spot, then the scoring is going to be through the roof for them, because you're still going to have some very effective scorers around him. If he's going to continue to be able to shoot free throws at the rate in which he does, then it makes it a very different proposition for what you're going to do late game versus Auburn. He takes care of the basketball, right? So I think he might be a better fit for what's needed in the direction that this team is going to go. But I still think that Trey Donaldson today is the best guard of the three, and which would mean, of course, that Aden Holloway would be number 3 in that ranking. But again, Aden's potential is through the roof, specifically in his ability to shoot the basketball. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Aden finds himself at whatever the next destination is going to be for him. And if he's able to really reclaim his confidence and his ability to shoot the basketball world is going to be in for some trouble there with that young man. But yeah, so I would put them right now, Trey 1, JP 2, Aden 3. But again, 1 and 2 are running neck and neck for me, and I could flip-flop them both. But I think that this is a quality get for Auburn at the point guard position. Very happy as an Auburn fan for what Auburn was able to do with this. But listen, you all are Auburn fans, and I want to hear what you think about all of this. Who would you say is, based upon what you know, the best point guard of the three? Some people in their minds are like, hey, we're only going to talk about the guys that are on the team, which is completely fine. I understand. Put JP number 1 and let's move on with your rankings. But I do want to know, what do you feel about the signing of JP Pegues, and do you feel like Auburn has has upgraded the point guard position with this acquisition. I'm done talking. You guys can continue the conversation. Make sure you let me know how you're feeling about it. Once again, the Morning Drop is here and brought to you by the good folks at Rogue Shop. Make sure you head to rogueshop.com and use code REPORT. When you do, get you a little something off of your purchase at America's #1 online dispensary. Sleep, stress, pain, anxiety. Rogue Shop's got a remedy for you. Make sure you let them know the War Report sent you by using code REPORT. Before you get out of here, please like that video, subscribe to the channel, share the content with somebody, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on pod. We'll be back with you with another Morning Drop. If you are a member, make sure you have those notification bells set so you know when we're going to be dropping some more film for you. But I'm out of here. Until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.